On historical perspective of IMD, and there couldn't have been a more learned and experienced personality than Dr. Kelkar, who was there when 100 years were completed. So last 50 years, he has been actively involved in the IMD's progress. And earlier 100 years, his historical perspective is very deep. So, Professor Kelkar.
Thank you, Dr. Tyagi. It's a very distinguished audience on the stage and in the hall. My namaskar and pranam to everybody. Can we start with the first slide? Sorry. Fine. This is the title one. The theme is IMD at 150, a historical perspective. This is not a chronology of events in the order in which they happened. We will be talking about people, places, institutions, science, technology, and how all of them interacted over 150 years to make IMD what it is now. IMD's history began on 15 January 1875 in the city of Bombay, now Mumbai. And this is how Bombay looked like at that time. You can see the Bombay High Court, the university, and the secretariat. And a person named Henry Francis Blandford sailed into this city from the United Kingdom, from England. And he was a geologist turned meteorologist. Blandford had come to India in 1855 with a degree of the Royal School of Mines in London. He joined the Geological Survey of India, didn't like it very much, to our advantage. And then he started teaching physics in Calcutta in the Presidency College. In 1864, he developed an interest in meteorology so much that he became almost a meteorologist. He was appointed the Provincial Meteorological Department of Bengal. Blandford was asked to create IMD. The British were fond of pompous titles, and Blandford was chosen to be the Imperial Meteorological Reporter to the Government of India. I would have liked to have such a title. He assumed charge of this new post in Bombay. When IMD was not there, it was to be created on 15 January 1875, which is when we celebrate IMD's Foundation Day today. Blandford started touring the country and made a vision document, which was accepted by the government, and IMD formally came into existence on 27 September 1875. The British had a natural fascination for observatories, geomagnetic, astronomical, meteorological, and so on. But there were a lot of meteorological observatories already in operation before 1875, like the East India Company, the provincial governments, Survey of India, railways, port trusts, all of them had. There were amateurs and enthusiasts, like college professors, medical doctors, even Christian missionaries, and there were Maharajas who had their own observatories. So the first astronomical observatory came up in Chennai, Madras then, in 1796. The meteorological came a few years later. And in 1841, there was a geomagnetic observatory in Colaba, in Bombay, now Mumbai. The same year, there was a meteorological observatory in the same place. In 1841, there was another observatory in Trivandrum, Tiruvananthapuram now, which was not a British observatory, but one that was set up by a young Maharaja, Raja Balarama Verma, who was a progressive ruler, and he was patronizing arts and sciences. In 1829, the Survey of India set up an observatory in Calcutta on Park Street. And the man in charge was one Radhanath Sikdar. He was a unique person because he had calculated the height of Mount Everest, but never got the credit for it. So he was in charge of the Met Observatory for 10 years. The first Indian to join IMD was one Lala Ruchiram Sahani. He joined IMD in 1885 in Calcutta, worked for a while, and then went to Simla. But he didn't like it very much. He wanted to teach. So he left IMD and in 1887 became a professor at the Government College in Lahore, from where he had come. Interestingly, his son Birbal Sahani became a renowned paleobotanist. The second Indian to join IMD was Lala Hemraj. He joined later in 1887. He liked IMD and worked for a promotion to the post of imperial meteorologist. He died while in service in 1920. The first two Indian Directors General, many people were taken into IMD in the 1920s. Two of them were Dr. S.K. Banerjee and Mr. V.V. Soni. Dr. Banerjee became the DG of IMD before independence, while the British were still there, and Soni succeeded him. The IMD had different names at different times. It began with the Imperial Meteorological Reporter to the government in 1875. During the time of John Elliot, the name was changed to Director General of Observatories, implying that IMD was a network which had to be managed. Much later, in 1975, Y.P. Rao became the Director General of Meteorology, implying that it's a science department and service comes next. 1875, IMD started its work in Calcutta. The first observatory came in 1877 and got its building in 1899. Simla was the summer capital of colonial India. People found it very hot in Calcutta, so every summer they went to Simla. After summer, they came back to Calcutta. So IMD went from Calcutta to Simla to back every year, got tired of it, and decided to stay put in Simla for the rest of the time. So by 1905, IMD moved to a small bungalow named Constantia, which is still there. It houses the Young Women's Christian Association, and IMD had to leave that, went from place to place, finally decided that Simla was too cool, and Pune was better. It was a place of culture, had good climate, and they built this imposing building, magnificent one, which is there in Pune, and known as the Simla office. Much earlier than thought of, 1944, IMD decided to move to Delhi. They were in that small building which is still there. By 1975, Vigyan Bhavan came up. IMD always had two core activities, monsoons and cyclones. The oscillations of the monsoon between droughts and floods, and the impact of the cyclones on the coast. So the first long-range forecast came from Henry Blandford in 1886. It was based on only one parameter, the Himalayan snowfall. It was something like an essay in beautiful language, quite qualitative. Sir Gilbert Walker was mentioned some time back. He was the DG for 20 years. And sitting in Simla, he got data from the whole world, because the British Empire ruled the whole world and getting data was easy. And he established correlations of the monsoon with something like 100 global parameters. He discovered the southern oscillation, with which we now link El Nino and call it ENSO. The Walker circulation is named after him. For a long time, long-range forecasting remained a low-key affair, until 1988, when Dr. Vasant Govarikar, Department of Science and Technology, came into it, and he led an IMD team to make what came to be known as the 16-parameter statistical model. This worked well for 13 years. The monsoon also complied for 13 years, remaining normal, but in 2002, it failed to predict the drought. This model brought credibility to IMD. People became aware of what IMD is. After the failure in 2002, IMD took up modeling in various ways: statistical, dynamical, probabilistic. And in 2012 came the monsoon mission, which strengthened all of these activities. Cyclone prediction, there are two contrasting maps on this. One is dated 1880, which is a piece of paper on which the stormy weather areas are identified. Thousands would perish in this type of cyclones. On the right-hand side, you have a very sophisticated track of cyclone Biparjoy. Several days in advance, loss of life was almost zero. In 1962, IMD decided to study tropical meteorology in greater detail and set up its own unit in Pune with Dr. P.R. Pisharati as the director. Later, it became an autonomous institution, the IITM. Dr. Nanabhai Moose was a geomagnetic expert. and he worked at the Kulaba and Alibag observatories for a long time. Finally, this activity became a new institute, Indian Institute of Geomagnetism at Panvel. IMD had telescopes at Kodaikanal for looking at the sky. This became astrophysics in its own way. And with Dr. M.K. Vanubapu as the director, Indian Institute of Astrophysics became a separate institute in 1971. Dr. P.K. Das, when he was the DG, numerical weather prediction came into IMD. It grew into a separate center, the NCMRWF, which is in Noida. When Dr. Das was the DG, he created the Center for Atmospheric Sciences as a part of IIT Delhi. It is flourishing. Dr. A.N. Tandon was a renowned seismologist. He was a colleague of Professor Richter, whose name we now know as the Richter scale. Seismology grew in IMD, and finally we have the National Center for Seismology in Delhi. Dr. K.R. Ramanathan joined IMD in 1925, and he did pioneer work in ozone, when nobody knew what ozone was. He became the director of the Physical Research Laboratory on the invitation of Dr. Vikram Sarabhai. Dr. P.C. Mahalanobis was a scientist, also a meteorologist in Alipur, and he set up his own Indian Statistical Institute in Calcutta. 6 of IMD's scientists have been awarded with national honors. The Padma Vibhushan went to Dr. K.R. Ramanathan and Dr. P.C. Mahalanobis. The Padma Bhushan to Dr. P. Koteshwaram and Dr. M.K. Vanubapu, and Padma Shri to Dr. P.R. Pisharoti and R. Anant Krishna. In 1950, India joined the World Meteorological Organization as a founder member. And 3 of IMD DGs have been WMO Vice Presidents, Dr. P. Koteshwaram, Dr. N. Senroy, and Dr. Mahapatra sitting here. IMD participated in several expeditions and experiments, mainly the International Indian Ocean Expedition, IIOE, in 59-60, the Monsoon Experiment in Monex 79, and many others. IMD's Antarctic connection dates back to 1910, when George Simpson, who was a Britisher, was working at Simla in IMD, and between 1910 and 1912, he was a member of the expedition to the South Pole, led by Robert Falcon Scott. He unfortunately perished in that expedition. So George Simpson had carried meteorological instruments from India to Antarctica. When he came back, he became the chief of the UK Met Office. IMD's Antarctic connection was reinforced in 1982, when 2 of our people, A.K. Sharma and Ken Katiyar, landed on Antarctica on the Polar Circle ship. And in the 20th Indian Summer Expedition, Estella was the first woman member from IMD to be part of that. Talking of women, in 1948, Anna Mani joined IMD as the first woman meteorologist, and she became a renowned instrumentation expert. Many women later on joined. We have Dr. Narendran Jayanti sitting here. She was additional DG in 2006-07, and Dr. B. Amudha was the winner of the WMO Willow Vaisala Award in 2016 for technological excellence. In 1948, we had only 1 woman scientist in IMD. Today, the workforce of IMD has 15% of women. IMD has come a long way. We have been hearing this since morning. 1875, this is how temperature was measured. An observer went into a hut. The hut had thermometers hanging from the roof, and there was a thatched roof to cover the thermometers from rain and shine. Then came the Stevenson screens in 1930. Finally came the automatic weather station, which we have in plenty in now. The first balloon observations were taken in 1914. Now we have balloon observations everywhere, including Antarctica. The first weather radar came at Dum Dum Airport in 1954. Then came the first cyclone detection radar on Dolphin's Nose in Vizag. And finally, the first Doppler weather radar started 2002. IMD got satellite pictures from Russian and American satellites in 1965. 1982, India got its own INSAT satellite. So what the nation needs, IMD provides. In the 19th century, the priority areas were shipping and agriculture. In the 20th century, there were new priority areas, civil aviation, flood management, and tourism. And in the 21st century, there were new priority areas again, disaster mitigation, energy exploitation, health, and air pollution. So what the nation needs, IMD provides. What do we learn from history? This is my last slide. First thing, IMD was very quick in discarding its colonial legacy. Secondly, it has India in its name, it has India in its heart. IMD scientists were pioneers and visionaries, and something like 8 scientific institutions grew out of IMD. I will say that IMD has been an engine of growth. Finally, I'll conclude by saying that IMD has contributed to the nation's priority. I'll end this little talk with wishing IMD a bright future, and I finish it with my prayers and blessings. Thank you very much.